IB Nation, welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I am your host, Bryan Driscoll, joined today by all of you. You guys are my co-hosts today, and we are going to talk some Notre Dame football. We're less than 2 weeks away, folks, from the kickoff, the Notre Dame kickoff of the 2024 season. We're less 6 days away from college football kicking off overall. It's 6 days from now. I don't know about you guys, but I'm either going to be sitting here talking to you guys with the game on the screen, or I'm just going to be sitting on my couch watching Florida State, Georgia Tech. So we are 6 days away from college football kicking off. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I'm wondering if there might not be like a Thursday game or something like that, the way that they schedule games nowadays. But I believe Saturday is the official kickoff. Yep, there's 4 games on Saturday. Florida State, Georgia Tech at noon, Montana State, New Mexico at 4, SMU, Nevada at 8, and then Delaware State and Hawaii at midnight. So college football is right around the corner. I'm excited. I know you guys are excited, but still lots to talk about this Notre Dame football team. And we're going to dive into several very interesting topics today as we get ready for this last week of non-game prep shows. So we'll talk obviously about more big picture stuff, a little Texas A&M this week, but next week, Monday, is when we will dive into our breakdown of the Notre Dame Texas A&M game. We'll release our new lineup, kind of what the shows are going to be, what we're going to talk about, just how everything is going to go. So I'm excited about that. Still putting some finishing touches on some things, but going to be a very, very fun season. I just can't wait for it to get there. I mean, for me, it's just one of those things where, you know, I look at this season and there's such high expectations for what this team can be. And you're at the point now where we've kind of talked it to death in certain areas. You just want to find out who this team is going to be. And one of the good things about the kind of team that Notre Dame starts the season off with is you get a bit of an idea of okay, you're not going to know for sure who Notre Dame is in the opener, good or bad, but it certainly gives you your first taste, and we get a chance to figure out who this team is going to be. So today, I'm going to talk about some interesting topics for today. At least I think they're interesting. Number one, we're going to talk about captains. The Notre Dame released their released 5 captains on Sunday. And so we're going to talk about that. And then after we talk about the captains and then just leadership in general, some of the things that I like about the leadership structure, some of the questions that I still have about leadership for this football team. I'm going to next dive into the offensive line. A lot going on there. And I don't know that I've been able to kind of properly dive into it with everything that's kind of going on last week and dive into just the latest news, what it means, just a lot of why are we seeing what we're seeing, good and bad. I'm going to dive into that as well. It's going to be very interesting. And then the last part is there was a lot of talk on Saturday after the Jersey scrimmage. And by the way, I want to talk about the Jersey scrimmage tweet here in a second too. But Freeman talked about it, and Al Golden talked about it, and Mike Denbrock talked about it. And then we've seen it in practices. And I've told you guys, look, stop worrying about who's going to start. Somebody asked me a question about starting at a thing I was speaking at this past week. And I said, look, unlike in the past, like you got to get out of your head who starts or who doesn't start. It really doesn't matter as much anymore. It's who's going to play, because you're going to be going past one player at most positions outside of O-line and quarterback. And so we're going to get into that conversation and talk about depth, just kind of some of the comments that have been made about it and why it matters. Like, why is it important beyond some of the superficial things? Why does it matter that Notre Dame plays a lot of players? Where does it help Notre Dame to play a lot of players? What are some of the potential pitfalls of playing a lot of players? And how to make it work? And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the positions where you should play a lot of players, positions where, maybe you need to be a little bit concerned or at least be smart about it, and then positions where I just don't think you should do it. And then whether or not this plan is going to work out well for Notre Dame. So that's the topic of conversations today. Going to have fun with it. Going to talk about some fun things tomorrow as well. One of the topics tomorrow, and I'm hoping to have Trevor Trowbridge on the show with me tomorrow, But I'm gonna pose the question tomorrow: is Notre Dame entering a golden age of running back play? Have they already entered a golden age of running back play? And another topic I'm going to have tomorrow is going to be very interesting, I believe. And that topic is going to be, it was posed a question on the message board yesterday to me, and not by me, but to me. And I thought this was a great topic of conversation to have for a show. So actually, I'm gonna look that up real quick and try to find who that was, because I want to give that person a shot. It was Jimmy McGill is the person who posed the question, and I'm going to turn it into a segment on the show and basically talk about where is Notre Dame better right now than they were last year. Where are they not as good right now, based on what we know right now compared to last year? I'm going to kind of look at a couple different ways. Is number one, it's where are they better now? Where are they not as good right now, based on what we thought of the team going into last year, but then also where the team actually was during the season. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation. So shout out to Jimmy McGill on the message board, the premium board, for that, posing that question, and got me thinking about, like, hey, this would be a really fun topic to talk about in the segment. And then we may do a buy sell hold tomorrow. I'm not quite sure if we're going to do that tomorrow or Wednesday, because I would like to get Trevor in a buy sell hold, but I don't want to do it Thursday, because then that's right up next to the mailbag. So we'll see. I'll let you guys know, and if we do it, I'll put it on the message board. So that's going to be the topics for tomorrow. So going to be a fun week, I think, guys. I'm ready to rock and roll, and let's get this thing going with today's topics. So for today's show, let's dive into topic numero uno. Notre Dame released their list of captains on Sunday. Notre Dame was Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman was asked about the captains on Saturday, and he said that it will be released soon. Soon ended up being the very next day. Notre Dame released a list of 5 captains for this week, and that's this season. And that's always kind of one of the questions is, okay, how many captains will there be? There's been years where they've had 1, years they've had 3, 5. There's years they had more than 5, which I think gets to be a little too much. But you had 5 captains, not a ton of surprises, a couple of little surprises that I'm going to talk about, but overall I think this is a really quality group of captains. I'm going to go through the 5 captains. I'm going to list. Jack Kaiser was named a captain. Xavier Watts was named a captain. Riley Mills was named a captain. Riley Leonard was named a captain. And Benjamin Morrison was named a captain. So I'm going to go through those 5 guys, talk about those 5, talk about maybe some of the surprises that maybe based on what we were thinking kind of over the summer. Going to get into, is it a concern that there's more defensive guys than offensive guys? Should they have done something to make it a little bit different? That's another part of the conversation. And then also the difference between leadership and being a captain. And you need one to be the other, but you need to be a leader to be a captain, but you don't have to be a captain to be a leader. And I'm going to talk about that and get into that conversation as well. So looking at the 5, number 1, beginning with Jack Kaiser. I'm going to go oldest to youngest from the class that they're in. And number 1, Jack Kaiser was named a captain. This is expected. Jack Kaiser came back as a 6th-year senior. Jack has played a lot of football at Notre Dame. He's been a starter really since 2021. Has played a ton of snaps, and he's also been very productive during his Notre Dame career as well. As we've talked about, last season, Jack tied for the team lead in solo tackles and was 3rd on the team in total tackles, despite being 12th on the defense in snaps. Think about that. He was tied for the team lead in solo tackles, 3rd on the team in total tackles, and yet he was 12th on the defense in total snaps last season. That a lot of production. Jack is also someone who's been a special team stalwart in his career. Has played over 1,200 snaps during his Notre Dame career on defense, has played over 800 snaps in his career on special teams. So you're talking about a guy that enters the season with over 2,000 career snaps. So not a big shock that Jack Kaiser was named the team captain for Notre Dame. And also is just a guy that you look at as sort of a leader type of player. And someone that you think I think most of us, for his work on defense and his work on special teams. Somebody said, why don't they have a special teams captain this year? And I was like, well, they kind of do. It's Jack Kaiser. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, he's a starting linebacker, but with the rotation that they're going to use, there's no reason that you should take Jack off some of the special teams where he's at his best. And I think that'll continue. So Jack Kaiser was probably, there were two guys that I was most certain of. There were other guys I thought would be captains. Some were, some weren't. But there were two that I was absolutely locked in and thought no doubt would be captains, and Jack Kaiser was one of those players. The second captain that we're going to discuss is also someone that I fully anticipated being a captain. That's Xavier Watts. It's been such a great story. Xavier's story is great. Came in as a 3-star kid by national services. We had him as a top 100 caliber player, or I did, as a top 100 caliber player. Starts on offense. We hear great things from other players and parents about how good he is, but then they don't give him a shot to play, and they start moving him around back and forth. He's playing both ways. First, they move him to linebacker, then they move him to nickel, then they move him to safety. And it really wasn't until last year that he got to be a 100% defensive player for the entire year. Even in 2022, he ended up not playing receiver, but he practiced it a decent amount in the spring and fall camp. And, got his first real taste of being a regular in the defensive rotation. Last year, breaks out. First year as a full-time starter. Monster year for Notre Dame. Leads the nation, ties for the nation lead. Led the nation through the regular season in interceptions. He ended up having 8 turnovers last year, 7 interceptions, and then a fumble recovery. All 8 of them ended up in touchdowns. And this from a guy that has now twice decided to stick it out at Notre Dame. The first time was when he was getting, and I'll just be honest, I'll just say it. I said it to people at the time. I probably said it in shows. He got screwed as a wide receiver. He flat out should have played at wide receiver for Notre Dame. He got screwed. He got jerked around. People weren't honest with him. Wasn't coached up in a way that he should have been coached up. And instead of leaving, he said, I'm going to stick it out. I made a commitment. I'm going to stick it out. And he wasn't happy about things that were going on. They asked him to move to defense. He's like, hey, I'll do whatever I need to do. Moves over to defense, ultimate team player. Time finally comes. He gets his chance to go make an impact, and he makes it. He could have easily, unanimous All-American, leads the nation in interceptions, Bronco Nagurski Award winners, the nation's best defense, as hot as he could be as a prospect. He could have gone to the NFL and said, hey, I'm going to take my chance in the NFL. I'm going to get my money. I'm going to start my professional career. And he says, nope, I have some unfinished business. Now, yes, part of that unfinished business is there are things he knows he needs to improve on as a player. But the other part of it is there were things that mattered to him, winning a national championship, improving his game, but also being a captain. And one of the things, like Xavier's a naturally, like he's not shy, but he's quiet. He's not a super talkative guy. But this offseason, he's taken on a big leadership role, talking to people inside the program. Very different player. Still not a nonstop, you're not going to confuse him with Jaden Mickey, guys like that at all, but much more of a vocal leadership role on top of being a leader by example. So from the things I've heard about Xavier Watts this offseason, I would have been absolutely floored, shocked, stunned if he wasn't a captain. So him being named a captain makes total sense, and he's absolutely earned it. Jack earned it. Xavier's absolutely, they've all earned it. But Xavier Watts is a testament to why just because you're not happy in the moment doesn't mean you should jump in the portal. Because who knows how things would have turned out for Xavier if he would have jumped in the portal. Sometimes it's okay to kind of work through things that aren't going well for you instead of just cutting tail and running, which is what we've advocated for in college football nowadays. Hey, if you don't like your lot in life, if you're not getting paid enough, if you're not getting enough playing time as a freshman or sophomore, just go ahead and leave. Go somewhere else. And Xavier Watts is one of many examples of you look and say, hey, maybe that's not always the best thing. And Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison being captains in the same year is evidence that there are a lot of different ways to become a star. There's a lot of different ways to become a captain. One guy, the day he arrived, was a dude. I mean, just the day he arrived. And then the other guy, it took 4 years before him to really become a factor. But now going into 2024, they combined to form one of the best secondaries in college football, and they're both captains. Got their very different paths. And I just want to remind young people of that. No, man, no one in college sports, just any young people listening to my show. This is common. Xavier Watts' story is a lot more common than the other. And you may not like your lot in life, but keep pushing forward, keep working, stay focused, believe in yourself, and your time will come. And Xavier Watts exemplifies that. Another guy that has been someone who's been kind of moved around a lot during his career is Riley Mills, who was also named a captain. This one was a little bit of a surprise for me. Not that I don't think Riley has leadership ability and things that we were told this offseason. He certainly took on more of a leadership responsibility, but I didn't see captain being the end result for his offseason. And it's cool that it is, and I'm not upset about it. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just being honest, it was not on my predictions per se for who were going to be team captains. I thought it'd be Riley Mills. That was sort of the lead by example guy, not necessarily captain, but he was named a captain. And, just another guy that you look at and say big things are needed from him this season, as a player. And then now, obviously, after being named a captain, as a leader. And it's going to be very important that he continue to make those strides as a leader, but also the play has got to follow. And that's a big thing as well. And what you see from these first, there's 4 returners that are captains and then 1 newcomers that is a captain. The good thing about the 4 guys that are captains is they're all really good football players. There's nobody that was named a captain, and you're like, great kid, but not one of your best players. These guys are your best players, but for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part are your best players. And I think that's always an important part of being a captain. So Riley Mills is a captain. Your first 3 on defense, as we talked about, you really have and actually I'm going to talk about Riley Leonard last. I'm going to go to Benjamin Morrison next, just so I can make a point. But Benjamin Morrison's another guy that I kind of thought was going to be named a captain. You never know, because he's just a junior. Would he kind of follow in the Kyron Williams and the Kyle Hamilton and those type of players' role as a junior captain? He obviously was named a captain. He's always been a very mature player. What you heard about him when he first showed up was very focused kid, very businesslike in his approach, just very driven. Just, this is the goal in front of me and I'm working towards it. But this offseason has taken on more of a vocal role. Now, not so much the rah-rah guy, but more involved, more leading, more being willing to talk to people, encourage people, demand things from people. And I think those things all play into why Benjamin Morrison was named a captain. From what I've been told about Benjamin this offseason, I do not believe this is a situation where, hey, let's get our best player a captain role, which we have seen in recent years. This is something that I believe was a combination of our best player, arguably our best player, has emerged as a leader, and it makes sense to make him a captain even though he's just a junior. That's my understanding of where this one came from, or at least my what I believe have happened based on things that I've been told. Now, I also think that this was based on a vote, the players' vote. The head coach has ultimate a say on it. I don't know which of these are just, it could have been these are the top 5 vote getters. It could be a situation where maybe there was 3 that were above everybody else and 2 that they lifted up, or 4 or 5. Well, I don't know. But I think this was going to be a situation where Benjamin Morrison was going to be a captain, whether his teammates voted on it or whether the coaches assigned it, because you just want your best player who is an example for how to go about your business every day, as someone you can kind of lift up and say, that's an example of what a leader is in our football team. And Xavier Watts certainly exemplifies that. And so those are the 4 returners that were named captains for Notre Dame in 2024. Now, there's one player that is not a returner that was named a captain. That's Riley Leonard, the quarterback. And this is an interesting one. So I'm making my notes before the show, and I'm like looking at my notes because I'm trying to stay, kind of on schedule and not get. You guys know how I can get, right? I can kind of go all over the place if I don't have some structure to what I'm doing. This is one that so for each guy, we're like expected, bit of a surprise, expected. This one I put, I didn't know if it was expected or hoped for. And those things are kind of similar feelings, right? I would say if I had to be honest and really think about it, I'd probably say that Riley Leonard being a captain was more for me hoped for than expected. A quarterback does not need to be a captain to be a leader. We talked about this back in 2021 with Jack Cohn, but it's even better when he is. And then you think, okay, well, will he be able to emerge as a leader when he doesn't really have the spring to practice and prepare and all these other type of things? And Steve Angeli's a really well liked guy, and is that going to? And from what I've been told, it created no issues. Riley Leonard showed up a lot like Sam Hartman did last year. Hey, I'm one of the guys. I'm not going to big time people. I'm going to work my butt off, and just really was embraced quickly in the locker room. That was true of Sam last year in the offseason. It was also true of Riley this year. So it's not a surprise that he was named the captain, but it's still encouraging nonetheless to have your quarterback be a captain for your football team and to have be a guy that kind of came in late, meaning senior year, a lot of hype around him, money deals being thrown at him, a lot of rumors about how much money he's making, all this kind of stuff, potential high draft pick, and he just has come in and said, hey, I didn't come here for all that. I came here to work. I came here to win. And it's a great opportunity for him, but to emerge and grab that captain's role right away, I think is very big for Riley Leonard. And it's interesting too. I was thinking about this as I was prepping the show, and when you look at this Notre Dame football team, I believe this is the first time since 2021 that Notre Dame doesn't have a two-time. Actually, you know what? Let me think, because Avery Davis was a captain in 2021 and 2022, so you definitely had a two-time captain in 2022. You had a two-time captain you had two-time captains in 2022. You also had Jarrett Patterson. And then I believe Kurt Heinisch was a two-time captain at Notre Dame as well. I believe. I could be wrong on that one. But I believe this is the first time since 2021 that Notre Dame has, because I don't think that Kurt Heinisch was a two-time captain. I think about it. I know he's a captain in 2021, but I'm not sure about 2020. I'll have to look that up. Actually, let me work on finding that while I'm making this other point. But this is the first time since at the very latest 2021 that Notre Dame goes into a season without an established captain already on the team. And obviously last year you had JD Bertrand, and this has actually happened quite a bit for Notre Dame in past seasons where they have had a lot of multiple captains on their football team. And you think of like Robert Hainsey and Mike McGlinchey, I believe, was a two-time captain. But this is not something that's necessarily been a prominent thing for Notre Dame. Yeah, Kurt Heinisch was not a two-time captain. But in 2020, you had Robert Hainsey was a two-time captain. So, you've had multiple years where you've had two-time captains on your football team. So in the last 5 years, this is just the second time that you've had a group of five where you didn't have someone who was a two-time captain. So new leadership is emerging, and it can be good. It can have its drawbacks, but it also, I think, has a lot of good things, especially when your previous team maybe didn't live up to the expectations that you had. It's almost a little bit as if it's like a bit of a fresh start. And so those are your five captains. The only really big surprise that I had of a guy that wasn't named a captain, just for me, is I kind of assumed that Howard Cross was going to be a captain. Now, Howard's not a real vocal guy. He's a lead by example guy. And I just kind of thought he'd be that D tackle that was kind of stepped up. Not that Riley didn't deserve it, or that I'm shocked that Riley Mills got it, but just more like if I was voting, or if I was predicting the voting, I would have probably predicted that it would have been Howard Cross as opposed to Xavier Watts. There's other concerns about, there's only one of the five captains is an offensive guy, and that's a new guy. That's actually not at all surprising. We've talked about some potential captain type of guys on offense. I don't view Mitchell Evans as a captain. I think Mitchell Evans is a really good player. I don't view him as a guy that's captain material. Not that he's anything negative, just not every good player, good person is a captain. Also, with his injury history, I would be a little nervous about making him a captain. Then you look at other guys that have captain traits. I think Jaden Thomas certainly has captain traits. Pat Coogan, I believe, has captain traits. but they're not top players, and they may not even start for Notre Dame this year. And Jaden Thomas will play no matter what. But it's not. It's just one of those things where Pat Coogan may not start. You can't have a backup offensive lineman be named a captain. It's just not what you want to do because it's a good time to talk about this because I just was asked in the chat, like, what are the things that got to go into being a captain? And there's a lot of things that go into being a captain. Number one, there's obviously in games, you're there for the coin toss. When there's an issue on the field, the ref goes to a captain, a designated captain. So if there's like four guys on defense, there's one that he'll go to in the middle of a game. There's different aspects of leadership involved in addressing players, accountability in the locker room. Captains are at the end of the day held responsible for are we as a team doing what we need to do? Are you making sure that the culture of the program is where it needs to be? Are you holding people accountable? If you're a captain and you just want to be liked by everybody, you're probably not going to be a very good captain. If you're not willing to maybe say and do some hard things at times, there's different obligations when it comes to media, meeting people, talking to people. You represent the university beyond just you're a player at Notre Dame or a starter at Notre Dame. So there's a lot of things that go into it. You're an extension of the Notre Dame coaching staff in a lot of ways. And so you've got to be guys that have some maturity to you. You've got to be guys that have some willingness to speak and address things at times. And it's like I remember talking to a Notre Dame offensive lineman, and they were talking about what kind of captain Quentin Nelson was. And they were like, Quentin wasn't a captain because he was in front of the room giving rah-rah speeches. Quentin was a captain for two reasons. Number one, great worker, great player. Like he set the example of that's what greatness looks like from a work ethic standpoint. That was number one. But number two, Quentin wouldn't talk like all the time. Like he wasn't like Mike McGlinchey was the talker. Mike McGlinchey was the inspirational speaker and the guy that stood in front of a room and, hey guys, and Quentin Nelson was the guy that when you weren't doing what you needed to do, Quentin was going to be in your face and you didn't want that. There's lots of different types of leadership, but it all goes down to you are responsible for the character and the culture of this football team almost on the same level as the Notre Dame coaches. It really is that it's that to me important as a captain to be that. And if your captains aren't ones that are leading and how they go about their business every day, then your team is going to struggle. And so those are things that I look at that are important for captains. And it's hard for me to say, like, well, that guy's going to be an effective captain when he's not playing. Like, how can you be a leader on the field when you're on the sideline the entire time? It's just that there's different aspects to it. Now, some guys can be like special teams. Like Bo Bauer was not a starter of the year. He was a captain, but he was still a captain. Why? Because he was basically a starter on special teams. And the other thing, I'm seeing some comments in the chat, guys. This isn't a seniority award, okay? If you don't understand the difference between one guy's been here for a year and the other guy's been here for 4 years, why is this guy a captain? Because he acts like a captain, because he is a captain, because he is a leader. Just because you've been here 4 years and you're a talented player doesn't mean you deserve or you are a captain caliber player. Some guys just need to go play. That's it. Some guys just need to go play. Doesn't mean they're bad guys. I mean, you need to be a cat. You got to earn that. And not every guy that's a senior earns that. And not every newcomer should be denied that simply because he's a newcomer. There's a reason the players voted on this, and there's a reason why fans don't and shouldn't have a say in this. It's about the culture of the football team. And if the players look at a newcomer and see the work he puts in and the attitude he has and all the things that he does as a leader, and they say, that's a captain, then we should respect that as fans and say they might know a little bit more than we do about what's going on in that locker room. And this guy has earned that captaincy. Not every transfer has become a captain. Jack Cohn was not a captain. Doesn't mean he wasn't respected, because he was. He was just a different kind of guy. He was more quiet. He was a lead by example guy. Sam Hartman was different. Riley Leonard is different. What matters is that the players respect the guys that were named captains. And you talk to anybody around the program, and they'll tell you that Riley Leonard is absolutely someone who acts like a captain, conducts himself like a captain, and is respected as a captain. And that's what was needed. So now Flip side of that, is it a concern for me that you don't have more captains from the offense? It's not a concern that you don't have more captains because, as I said, most of your veterans are not your best players, with the exception of Mitchell Evans. Okay. And Mitchell is a dude, just do your job. You're good. Just, get healthy, go do your job. A lot of the other veterans are guys that aren't guaranteed to be starters. And then the other situation is a lot of your more experienced starters are also transfers at other positions. You've got Bo Collins, who could potentially start. You've got Chris Mitchell, who's going to come in and start. Outside of that, your starting lineup, based on what we, again, this may not be the starting lineup. I'm just going to use from what we most recently saw. You have a senior quarterback, a sophomore running back who's going to be 1A, 1B with a junior running back, a senior tight end who we've talked about hasn't played more than 8 games each of the last 2 years because of injuries. You have your receiving core is 5th-year transfer, sophomore, senior, who's going to rotate a lot with maybe a senior transfer. Your offensive line, left to right, is going to be freshman, redshirt sophomore, redshirt sophomore, redshirt sophomore. This is overall a young offensive team, with the exception of a couple transfers. There's only one as of Saturday, based on what we saw. Again, a lot could change, but based on the most recent availability, there's only one vet senior in the Notre Dame starting lineup that's not new, and that's Mitchell Evans. So I'm not surprised that there's not more than one captain on offense. It'd be nice if it happened, but I'm not surprised by it. What I do think needs to happen, however, is we do need to see some more leadership emerge on offense, because here's another piece of this. You have your captains who kind of serve their roles over the whole team, and then also their side of the ball. But every single room needs leadership. You need someone to emerge as a leader at running back. Doesn't have to be Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price. It'd be nice if it was, but maybe it's Devin Ford. Receiver, same thing. Who's the guy that becomes the leader in that room? Yeah, Jaden Thomas may not be a starter at wide receiver or a captain at receiver, but that doesn't mean he can't become the leader in the receiver room, whether he's starting or not, playing a bunch or not. Who becomes that guy? Could it be a guy like Jaden Greathouse, who's a younger player? I don't know. It's offensive line. There's no one in the offensive line should be a captain right now. Nobody. Because all your veteran players, Tosh Baker's a 5th-year senior, Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler are seniors, they may not even start. But somebody's got to lead. Is it Ashton Craig? Is it Billy Schrouth? Is it Emil Wagner? Is it still Tosh or Coogan, even though if they're not starting? Can they still be leaders? Those are all questions that need to be answered. Now, on defense, you've got a captain at corner, a captain at D-tackle, captain at linebacker, and a captain at safety. It's kind of easy. The other nice thing about the defense, too, is you've got the 4 captains, but you've got another guy on defense that we thought was going to be a captain in Howard Cross, and you've got 2 other guys on this team that are going to start or at least play a lot that were captains previously. So when you look at Jordan Clark, he was a captain last season at Arizona State. When you look at I'm drawing a blank here, Rod Hurd, he was also a captain last year for Northwestern. So you have guys that were leaders, that were captains at other places, that also bring a lot of experience and a lot of leadership to the depth chart on defense. Now, obviously, you don't have as much about saying that on offense, but that's what's going to be a neat. Somebody's going to have to step up this season on offense within each position group and sort of become leaders of that room. Who's setting the tone in the weight room? Who's making sure that guys are locked in and prepared in the meeting room? Because here's an example of what a leader does. Not a captain, but a leader. You're going into your film session, right? And I don't know, maybe they ask guys to take notes. I don't know what the technology is like. I haven't coached in a decade, so I don't know but we always had guys had notepads. A leader in the room makes sure that he's there well before it gets there. He demands his teammates be there early. And when everybody sits down, he's like, everybody got your pens, or let's say they have everybody got their pads everybody got their, whatever. As everybody got this, did everybody get this taken care of? All right, we're good. All right, coach, let's rock and roll. And you're ready to go really before the coach gets going. Coach shouldn't have to do all that. A coach shouldn't walk in to a position group and say, okay, everybody got their pads, everybody got their pens, everybody got their playbooks, whatever you need. That's something the leadership needs to be part of. The leadership needs to take that over and say, hey, we are going to hold each other accountable for this. It can't be Lauren Lando and his staff that are getting on guys in a position group for not putting in the effort or the focus or not putting weights away or doing just even little things you're supposed to do. You've got great leadership. When I was a coach, I knew I had great leadership when I didn't have to really do a lot of that self-discipline of the little things. Hey, man, you just finished with that rack. Take the weights off, put them back where they're supposed to go. No, those are 10s. You put it on the 10s. Like, those are things that may not seem like a big deal, but that attention to detail. You're the guy that you don't need to coach to find out a guy was late to class or a guy's not paying attention to class. You're pulling that guy aside saying, hey, man, I'm hearing this. What's going on? Get your head out of your you-know-what. This is what we're trying to do. Don't be a stumbling block to that. Or something positive. Hey, man, look, I know it's tough. I was there as a freshman, but you got to do this. You got to do this. Hey, go see such and such person in the academic thing. They'll help you out. They'll do this. They'll do that type of thing. Right? You need to have that. That's what leadership is. And that has to be established beyond the 5 captains. That's something that needs to be established in each and every room. And that's going to be the final piece of leadership that we need to see. And Al Golden had a quote on Saturday that I thought was interesting. And he said this, he says, look, there's going to be some captains, but we have way more leaders than captains. Everybody has the potential to lead. Even when I try to send notes to the defensive guys that are part of that leader group, it's a big number and it's not just seniors. There's guys that you're grooming that are sophomores or juniors that have a chance to be leaders. Again, there's leaders and great teammates. As long as there's no third parties, we're going to be in great shape. And that's the thing is, like, you love to hear that because you see them not focus on the present, but you're also seeing focus on the future. And that's very, very important. But leadership is needed beyond just the 5 captains. And the more guys you have that are leaders, but understand their role. So if I'm Rod Hurd, yeah, I'm a leader on this team. But when it comes down to who's talking in the room, if Xavier's talking, I'm gladly taking a back seat because he's a captain. But Xavier can't always be everywhere. So I'm going to step up too. So there's all those type of things that go into being a leader as well. And just because Riley Mills is the captain doesn't mean he has to be the one that's always doing. There's going to be a leadership role for Howard Cross and how he's going to be asked to do. So those are all parts that go into making a football team that go beyond what's your height, weight, 40, bench, experience level, production level. And the best teams, in my opinion, especially the best Notre Dame teams, are teams that have great leadership. And great leadership goes beyond just the captains. And that's going to be the final piece to this puzzle that we're going to see emerge here over the next several months is who is that leader? There was no leader in the receiver room last year, partly because your coach wasn't a leader and kind of neutered some of the guys that maybe could have had that role. We've seen guys in the position groups in the past where there really was no leadership in that room. If you don't have that, you're going to have big problems. And those big problems are going to end up costing you football games because if you think that you cannot have attention to detail in the weight room, in the locker room, in your dorm, and all these type of things about certain aspects, and then you're just going to flip that switch on when you play Bama, you're sadly mistaken. It's got to be more of a permanent part of what you do and how you go about your business every day. And you need more than 5 captains to make sure that that's going on in the locker room. And that's why I was very encouraged by some of the Coach Freeman comments and Coach Golden comments about, hey, look, captains are great, but leadership goes beyond captains. And that's something that we're going to see. It's still an evolution of this football team to see how that goes, especially now that captains are named. And certain guys say, okay, I was not named a captain. This is my role. I'm going to embrace it. Let's get ready to rock and roll. Or does somebody kind of get in their feelings and all those type of things can be an issue as well. From what I know of this team, I don't believe that's an issue right now. But we'll see how it kind of plays out as they go along. Is who steps up as the leaders in the room? Mitchell Evans may not be a captain, but they need him to be a good example and a leader in that tight end room. Or is it somebody else that steps up and sees that role? Always going to be an interesting thing, but you need leaders in every room, and it can't just always be the coaches. So I think that's especially true on offense. It's not a problem on defense, in my opinion. it needs to be something that evolves on offense, and I'm curious to see who those guys are. So that's going to do it for segment one, folks. Do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review on whatever platforms you guys are listening to Irish Breakdown on. We would greatly appreciate that. As always, sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Got some great stuff going on, great conversation, and our content package is going to be a little different this year. During the season, I'm going to produce a little less front page content, and I'm going to produce more premium members content only. So you're going to want to make sure that you're a part of that by signing up at boards.irishbreakdown.com.